We're delighted to have everyone here. It's our first people-centered internet call of the year, and we're delighted to have Erich Joachimsthaler as our guest. And Erich, I've known you for several decades, right? Now we're going way back, right? It goes back to David Acker declaring that he was at the end of his career and that I should go talk to you, all right, at Darden. So I came up with Heidi and we had lunch and kind of hit it off. And I've always liked your, as you say, positive contrarian, right, point of view, all right, across, a number of disciplines. Eric's going to share his book, the Interaction Field with us today. As you can see on the side of this book, I have a lot of, post-it tabs because I think Erich got a lot of things right in this book. I'm very happy with it. He's probably better known for this book with David, Brand Leadership. I mean, this is probably continues to give you royalties, Erich.
It does, actually.
So it's a, if you study that discipline, branding, if you haven't read that book, then, you're not in tune with what's going on. So it was a, clearly a leadership piece. Now, Erich is CEO of Vivaldi Group, and he may, throw some things in about Vivaldi. He's mostly talking about the book today, but I'll just tell you that their office is all over the world, and they work at the intersection of brand and strategy and trying to put a number of things, innovation, into action, as opposed to just, talking about it or handing a strategy over and saying, good luck. So he's got a big team of people who can actually do it, including technologists that can, make it real in a variety of ways, employing, technology realities. So he's been a pleasure to work with, and he's been on the board of Content Evolution, my federation, for 2 decades, and I'm delighted to have Erich with us today. Erich, we find you in New York City after running a marathon. Good for you, my friend.
Half. Just 13 miles.
A half marathon.
If you would, it would be the whole marathon, you would not see me smile right now.
Well, we're glad that you're here. So after Erich unpacks a few things, we'll go to Q&A, and if you've got any questions, put them into chat, or when we get to the Q&A session, raise your hand using the reactions function at the bottom of your screen. So with that, Erich, we're glad you're here.
Great, thank you. I have only 10 slides. So, and sort of to illustrate a bit sort of the journey of my thinking and what I want to, what I thought would be a good basis for discussion for the rest of the time. So I can take any amount of time to go through these 10 or 8 slides that are really relevant. And I thought, to me, that what sort of got me excited to spend maybe the hour here is to think about, how companies create value, and of course in this world of internet and AI and Web3. And so my overall thesis is that there is the way the internet has evolved is not in the most positive way. There is the internet of today is broken, and there is a better way to build, rebuild that internet. That's why what I call a fairer world. I can put on the slides and then talk about this a bit, and I think you'll see from the slides that what sort of my thesis is, in case you go for a coffee or something in between. So let's see, share the screen. Then I go here, share, and share now with the big thing. So now you should have a full screen of
Yes,
the slide.
that's fine, Eric.
Yeah. So this is sort of 3 books that I wrote. The first one was this is 23 years old, really. And it summarized when I met Kevin back in the 90s, it summarized what we were thinking about at the time. At the time, we said, brand is much more than the logo and the name and all of these visual identity, what corporate identity firms used to sell from the New York corporate identity firms in the world, rebranding delivery of a plane or something. And we said brand is an intangible asset that needs to be managed, and it drives enormous value for companies. And that strategic perspective from a strategy point of view was sort of natural for me because I did my postdoc at Harvard Business School, and that's when I worked with Michael Porter and some of the strategy professors I still work today with, and sort of they influenced me. What is your world? What is my world? And it became the brand world relative to their very important strategy world. And sort of I translated most of the work we did is almost like taking a brand point of view to the basic strategy question of how do you position a company, and particularly in that book, the idea of a brand portfolio, a product portfolio. How do you organize and manage a portfolio, which we call the brand architecture. And we used a model which became very popular, called the branded house and house of brand model, the spectrum. That solves sort of many of the architecture issues. You're like GE, which everything under one name, GE, or you're more like Procter & Gamble on the other extreme, sort of a portfolio of brands. Nobody knows Procter & Gamble really, from a consumer point of view. Then the next book was about, that one is actually published at Harvard Business School, where I looked at, say like, look, you need to look at it from a demand perspective, from an outside-in perspective. And you need to understand consumers as a system. And then you can actually drive innovation in many new ways. And that became that book. And if you do this properly, this process that I talked about, then you can actually see the biggest opportunities. We are actually in plain sight. Kodak is this old example. They had the digital camera in plain sight, but they didn't see the opportunity. And Nokia saw later the same thing. They had obviously the market share and everything, but they didn't see the opportunity in plain sight that Apple sort of like captured. Then the last book that came out 2 years ago is the Interaction Field book. And I think you'll see how that thinking sort of evolved in my thing. I sort of got to around this idea about the interaction field around 2013 or something. Until then, everybody talked about sort of the worldview always was about there is a value chain. This is sort of the Michael Porter side type of thinking. There's a value chain, and you need to manage the value chain. And the better you perform the activities along the value chain, the more successful you are. And I consulted to all 3 of the German premium luxury car companies, Mercedes, BMW, and Audi. And I can guarantee you, I was in their offices for many years, and they all manage this, what I call a pipeline or value chain. They say, we design, we manage, we sell. You see this on the bottom left. And we make consumer buy a premium luxury car because it has German engineering. And BMW will say, because we are better on design, or we are better on manufacturing, or we are better on branding the car as an ultimate driving machine, or in America at least, we can sell a price premium. We are a better company. And if you go to Mercedes, it's the same thing. And if you look at the 3 car companies, Audi, Mercedes, and BMW, they all sort of look at each other. They all are within about 100 miles from each other. And the locations, the headquarters And every chart that in those days I would look was how are we different from on any of these dimensions on the value chain. And that's sort of like a logic, you know, every company operates like that. You know, the GM, you know, you have the same thing in the United States with GM and Ford still to the very day. And the assumption is that if the better you do this, you create a competitive advantage. And when you have a competitive advantage, then you can create superior profits. You drive market share. The higher your market share, the lower the more profitability your firm is. That was sort of like how when I taught for 15 years. That's what we were teaching everybody. And it was all about competition. And then it was with Clayton Christensen, a good, well-respected, and I've talked many times with. He's not a friend of mine, but he used to be someone I really look over and a lot. And he talked about disruption, you know, disruptive competition. And I felt around 2013, somebody wrote an article in the Wired magazine, and they talked about from pipelines to platforms. And I go like, oh, what is all this about? And Sangeet Shudari is actually the guy's name. And in 2014, there was two academics, economists, won a Nobel Prize on a two-sided marketplace. And that got me very interested in these ideas that we are not really competing in walls anymore. You know, the walls requires, if you think of the car companies, wall requires that there's a boundary, that they sort of like naturally via the car industry. And these boundaries are like borders, you know, like literally you can insulate yourself from competitors. And the car companies have very much learned that that doesn't work, you know, because Tesla came in and basically is sort of like became the most valuable car company in the world very quickly. And so the idea that competing in a category, in an industry, or in an organ, in a particular geography, and kind of like you establish boundaries or in the strategy literature called barriers to entry. That was sort of like the big thing we used to teach in the old days. That just didn't seem right. And there's this new world, the whole economy is shifting into this new world of networks. And platforms is one way to do it. And the nature of business is not about competition, but it's about collaboration. So that was sort of articulated in the 2013 article. I kind of like I like this pipeline platform discussion. You know, we talked about platforms like Uber at the time, you know, and then Airbnb used to be sort of a platform like that. And the example was okay, but it really struck me when in 2014, these two professors, both of them from the Université de Toulouse, actually, in Hachette and these two guys actually came up with this, and Tirol is the second guy that they came up with this another model and another economic model. And that sort of got me excited and say, like, what are these economic models? How do we evolve, you know, from a platform? Was it Ben? You said like you're in Montana, or was it Frank? I think Frank, you mentioned it, right? You live somewhere. You said like the data thing earlier.
Yes, this is Frank in Dillon, Montana. I specialize rural, remote, and indigenous self-directed internet learning, teaching people how to be lone eagles as a business of one. That's a big thing for 30 years.
Okay, great. So, you know, I come from a very small village from Germany, and at least I was born there, and which is kind of farmland type things. And one thing that got me excited is some of the work at John Deere. And when I researched John Deere very extensively, because I said, like, look, John Deere is the great brand. You know, I think that in America, if you're a farmer and you ride on Deere, that's really that's a special thing. You know, these John Deere's, these tractors, set you back, like you can buy 3 Rolls Royces for that. They're $800,000 monsters. So, you know, so it's not an easy, you know, not for everybody, let's say. But in Europe, if you drive a John Deere, even in Germany, we have our own farm equipment, you know, Claas is one of them. But if you drive a John Deere, like in Denmark or in Holland, that is a mark of distinction. This is like so amazing. It's like the most amazing brand in the farming business, and a lot of things. So I studied the technology and the stuff from John Deere. You know, the autonomous driving. I'm sure that Kevin saw it at CES and in Las Vegas now, and what I researched it very carefully. So I thought farming is such a big thing, you know, because it's literally one of the biggest industry worldwide. It's also so essential for all of us. And I thought, like, what is this in the latest John Deere tractors? You have 3 screens. You know, you can actually monitor the field that you're driving, you're mowing. At 8 miles per hour, so pretty slow thing. But you also can have a screen on Netflix and watch a Netflix episode. And there's another screen you can actually watch a football game or something, the NFL. So it's like it's a technology. There are many sensors, gazillion sensors on these cars and on these trucks. And one of the biggest things is the autonomous driving. So you can drive within 1 inch. You can actually cut within 1 inch. It's called precision farming. You can cut within one inch. These machines they're semi-autonomous, and they're much more autonomous than what you see on the street. You know, like what you see in Tesla. So this is really amazing stuff. You know, it's sort of the productivity improvement per hectare is like huge. 10% is huge, from 3,425 kilo per hectare to 10% of that. If you achieve that, this is huge for every farmer. Now, what I really researched was interesting. John Deere came up with something that wasn't just a tractor. They created something called My John Deere, and My John Deere is involving about 100,000 farmers. And the farmers, and that goes back to Frank's comment earlier, before we started this call. The farmers actually contribute their data, their soil data, for their farms. So they have sensors. There are sensors on either the tractors leave the sensors, or there are various ways to actually have sensors very close to the plant. And with those sensors, these 100,000 farmers actually pool their data, and they pool not only the farm data, the soil density, the soil depth, they also pool their profitability data. So where they buy the fertilizers, and where they buy the crop from Monsanto, Bayer it's called now, and so forth and so forth. What other things they do to maintain the machines and things like that, the labor costs and all of these things. So they all pull that together. And then, and especially the soil data. And what we found is that those farms that actually participate in this data network that John Deere has created, those farmers actually can nearly double the productivity of a farm. So from 3,425 kilo per hectare to 7,000 something. It's astronomical. And you know, this is huge, because if you get that productivity, it's not all realized, of course, but if you get to that productivity levels, you make every farm in this country, if every farm, there are 6 million farms out there in America. So if you could every farm adopt this, you would eliminate all the subsidies necessary from the government. It would make every farm profitable. It is so huge. It would solve for good food supply 30 to 40 million Americans here in this country, USA, actually are not eating very well. in healthy food because of not enough quality food. So we have a problem in this country. Globally, you can imagine. So there's it's solved. I got very fascinated because I am so amazed by this brand and this product, you know, better than a BMW, better than a Tesla. And this is John Deere, the leading edge in technology, but it's not the product that they're pushing onto the consumers. They're making a lot of money there. You know, they also have this not so good relationship in terms of the repair. You know, a farmer cannot repair those stuff. So there are many problems. Ben, you nod your head, you probably know that. You know, so there's a lot of problems. It's not about the world of walls in this case, pushing a product that they produce in Moreland, Illinois, to perfection, you know, to engineering standard. It is actually the data, and I call it the interactions that are happening. So for example, with the sensors, they can actually say to fertilizer companies like Syngenta or Dow Crop Science, they can say, hey, instead of putting fertilizers by the pound around the plant, you can actually dose that much more carefully. And so right now, it's if you're a farmer, you have somebody working on your farm. You know, they sell your tractor, they sell you the insurance, they sell you fertilizers, they sell you crop. They all sell to the farmers. And instead of trying to be optimal about this, you know, and if you put much fertilizer onto a particular land, it's not usable for the next year. You need to, you know, you need to shift it to another land until you can actually put the same crop up there. So there's a lot of problems. And what got me so excited about these networks is that these networks solve problems that we could have never solved before. You know, food supply problems, subsidy problems from the Department of Agriculture, profitability of the farms, and all of this is water depletion. You know, 40% of the water that's supposed to reach the plant never reaches the plant. That's a massive waste, and so and that obviously is a limited resource. So to me, I went around, so starting 2015, and I say let's not talk about brand alone. Brand is optimizing something on the left side. BMW calls me and asks me, you know, how can we do a rebranding of BMW? Should we change the ultimate driving machine slogan or something like that? I say no. The German says we should change it. I say no. So branding, it's not about the brand. It's not about the design of the car. It's not about the manufacturing. We are already at a very high level of efficiency. What we really create value is in a network. If John Deere brings the farmers together on a basis of data, if they bring the Syngenta, the fertilizer company together, the crop company together, ag tech companies together, the government together, and when you bring all of these parties together into one, I called it, you know, from the farm, a real field, I called it an interaction field, where interactions take place. Then you can really solve big problems, and not just a better tractor or a better BMW or a better this or faster this or something. That was sort of my thinking, that shift. Around that time, the World Economic Forum, which just took place last week, I didn't get an invitation, damn. but I'm waiting still, you know, like I'm running in age-wise, they might not want me anymore because, but anyway, I'm still hoping for next year now. But anyway, so World Economic Forum called it the fourth industrial revolution. You know, there's something new changing. So I was very interested in this, and this is sort of like creating networks, you know. Internet is one network, if you will. So that of course it's something that has massively changed from 2013. You know, the explosion of connected devices. I don't have to tell you that. Here is why I'm an economist by training originally. It's a little bit convoluted slide, but here is why this is so important. And the important thing is that when and this is what I call, which the economists and strategy professors call supply side economics and demand side economics. And what happens is, the first one, the blue line, supply side economics is the old game, and that is The bigger your volume is, the larger your volume of that you're selling is, the lower your cost. You know, you can amortize your variable costs across your fixed costs across by the variable cost. The more so there is, and you learn. You know, you get more efficient. You get more effective. So the costs are going down per unit as you sell more units. That's the whole idea behind market share. You know, like in a world of walls. Market share, the more I have market share, the more I am more profitable, because the more I have market share, the higher volume I have, let's say number of cars or tractors I'm selling, and the lower my cost, my cost per product. And so what happens is, my opinion, and this is sort of like the numbers the academics have sort of proven this over and over again, these supply side economics, they have a marginal return that is diminishing. That means at some point in time, the German factories or the Tesla factories or the GM factories, they are very, very efficient. They're optimized. They're globally optimized, also with technology, you know, and sensors. You know, some of them don't need less labor and so forth and so forth. But there is a limit of how you can create value from a supply side. These networks is different. Networks, they create value on the demand side, you know, and this is why Kevin and I frolic, marketing and branding and demand and consumer. So that's why we love this world, because demand side, they call it demand side economies of scale, are very different. And they scale networks, as you know, all networks scale exponentially. And this is why the Airbnb has become so successful, and Apple is so successful, and Amazon is so successful. They generate demand side. Namely, they create network effects. And network effects is that the more farmers participate in the farm, in this network, the more everybody else is better off. Because if my farm is next to, if I have a farm in Kansas, I studied in Kansas once, in Lawrence, Kansas, and there's another farm in Oklahoma and another farm in Nebraska, invariably you can learn from each other, because what happens in Nebraska when it gets cold, you know, it sooner or later ends up to be also in Kansas and then further down in Oklahoma. So the more farmers participate, the more valuable the product becomes. It's very different from supply side, because in the supply side, it's about efficiency of your product. You reduce your cost. In the demand side, who generates the value? The farmers, the consumers. That creates learning effects. You know, one farm can learn from the other. It creates viral effect. Farmers are not stupid. When something works, they are very conservative, but when something works, they talk. You know, otherwise they don't talk. I love this. So that is sort of like the fundamentals that I think we are talking about. So if you shift from that world of, as I describe in the book, from the world of walls, or if you just compete in the world of walls, you go along the blue line. If you're shifting like John Deere into a world of wall, but also a world of networks, then you actually get to that red line, and you can, in theory, create exponential new growth. So value creation. So I believe that 2022, as we speak, value creation is taking place on the demand side, on the right side, on that red line, rather than the blue line. Quickly, I'm almost done with my slides. This one, we then created a set of business models, and the value chain on the bottom left, very low value, low impact, digital interfaces. Like an example would be Domino's Pizza. It's you applying technology in order to get your pizza delivered faster. They're doing a very good job with that, by the way. Nike is now allowing you not only to buy shoes in the store, at Dick's or Sporting Goods or at Foot Locker, they also have a direct business. Actually, of their 45 billion, 1/3 already it has now shifted in direct to consumer. That's what I call a digital interface model. Platforms is when you bring together supply side and demand side, like an Uber. or where you have riders versus drivers is one weak example, let's say, but it's an example. And interaction fields are then solving much bigger problems. Interaction fields is like John Deere, where you still have a physical business, but then you lay on the top a platform or an interaction field, and then you make that work together with your legacy business, and namely practice, let's say, and then you can solve very big problems, not only smaller problems like Uber does, in my opinion. But anyway, so let me just quickly go through this one very quick here. This one chart I put in because I said, look at Airbnb, Amazon, and Apple as an example. On the supply side, Airbnb very successful, not profitable, interestingly enough, but very successful. It's a $100 billion company. On the supply side, they have 7 million hosts. People like me, my children have moved out. We have an apartment here. It's too big for us. There are spare rooms. We can rent it out on Airbnb. Haven't done it yet, but we could actually. So that's the 7 million types. But what's interesting is what is really the big business? It's the 200 million people like you and I who go travel on Airbnb. 200 million users. Amazon, the same thing. Amazon has a traditional retail business. You buy books and then you sell books, but they also have a platform, a marketplace, they call it. There are 2 million sellers that are active right now, about 6 million other ones that are not very active, but 2 million are active, over 100,000. They own over $100,000 merchandise. But what the real size of the business is the 300 million who actually have an account, a Prime account with globally with Airbnb, with Amazon. And the other example is Apple. Of course, they have the iPhone. But what makes the iPhone valuable? I have one right here. It's the apps that I get from the thing that I can use this damn thing other than looking at the time. And that is, there are 27 million developers who actually write those apps, and there are 1.3 billion iPhone users. So I say to myself, and this is where I'm looking at the economy and say, so what is really the shift here? Where do you create value? Is it on the left side? Yes, there's some value created. Obviously, there are 7 million places you can stay with Airbnb. That's a value. But the bigger value by factor of 10 and 20 is actually on the demand side, isn't it? Because 200 million users with 7, 300 million users, or customer accounts is 2 million, 1.3 billion. So the value is actually created by what? Consumers. And you know what sort of makes me upset about that? Who is making the money? It's not the consumer. So that's sort of a social sort of a question we have. Here I looked at a chart. This is 2 years old. So these days, 2 years old is actually old, but it shows you in 10 years what happened in terms of this revolution from the world of walls to the world of webs and networks. In 2010, what you see in the bottom there, this is in gray. These are the typical pipeline businesses, the world of wall business. And the violet, the color, I think it's violet, the violet color is the ones that were in those days already in the world of networks. Obviously, Microsoft is one example and Apple. If you look 10 years later, the top line there, if you look at what it's looked like, the platforms, these world of networks companies have all replaced the traditional pipeline company. 10 years ago, you had my client, Coca-Cola, in the top USA. Today, you don't see Coca-Cola anymore in the top USA. If you this is global numbers, but USA. But the one point is, not only have these companies, these platform companies or ecosystem companies, like the world of network companies, have replaced the traditional legacy companies, the product companies. They push out the product in this linear way, like the Mercedes and BMWs of the world. Tesla, you see, is even on the top there. I mean, it's annoying for every German executive, I would think. and the government there. And not only they have replaced them. If you look at the sizes of the bubble, these platforms have actually leveraged these network effects to such a powerful degree that they are now huge. Amazon is huge. Now, here's the thing is that currently I work on something with Amazon and the FTC. I don't think Amazon is going to like me very much because I helped the FTC in one of those lawsuits that they are filing against Amazon about monopolistic behavior. If you look across any one of these, whether it's Tesla or Google or Microsoft or any one of these, Facebook, they only, there's the problem I see at least. They have so while it is good that they have grown so much, and while we can now find stuff on the internet much easier through thanks to Google, and we can buy stuff much easier thanks to Amazon, there is some value to the consumer. Largely, these companies have become very monopolistic monsters in some ways. The practices are very, very bad. And I'm very much involved right now with the Amazon, the iRobot acquisition. And what they can do, and going back to Frank's point earlier, in order to get the data in the iRobot, if they buy iRobot, they will learn exactly what is the dimension of your house. The iRobot, it's this thing that automatically goes around your room and cleans up the floor for the hair from your dog, let's say, but it also recognizes objects, so they can say they have here's the couch, this is the size of the apartment, and one of the questions is how Amazon is using that information in order to unfairly compete with companies that are competing with iRobot. That's sort of one of these things. Just one of many, many examples. So here's the thing that sort of bothers me as we sit here today on a Sunday morning, and that is when you think about the internet. Is one of the best inventions. I mean, that in my lifetime has come around. But at the same time, these companies have not always not always used the internet for a good purpose. When you think about the people-centered internet, you should say, if it's really people-centered, if the value should be paid for or paid to those who create it. If value is created on the demand side by the people, then the value should be actually for the people and not for some companies that sort of like figures out how to write a website or something like that, like let's say the App Store for Apple. So that's sort of where I'm coming. So how can you create a fairer business world? And I'm very much a capitalist, so I'm not a tree hugging in my free time or something like that and eat granola bars. So I'm totally opposite. I like the profit picture a lot. But I think that there is, what I think sort of is so exciting, is so important, is that we are in this unprecedented opportunity to rebuild the internet so that everybody benefits. And this chart you probably are familiar with, the Web 1, 2, 3 world. It originally, when Windsurf sort of developed the first code on TCP/something it is, I forgot the exact code. It was the idea is that we all benefit as consumers. This is going to be very decentralized. And that actually worked to some extent until a few companies came around. And then came Web 2.0. And that changed everything. It changed from a decentralization network to a centralization network, meaning Facebook, Apple, which basically hoarding information from consumers and using that information. Apple using that information, Amazon, in order to unfairly take advantage of it. Like this is a crazy example, but I was the other day in the office at my company. We are about we have an office here on Flatiron, and I go to our restroom. We have a few restrooms there. I sat there on a restroom, and I looked on the shelf, and they had these packs of toilet paper there, and it said Angel Soft on it. So I went to the front desk and I says, I'm sorry if I ask a strange question, but what the hell is Angel Soft? And they go like, yeah, we buy this from Amazon. I go like, you buy it from Amazon? But how about, can we just have maybe like Pampas or Cottonelle, sort of like the famous brands, you know, Angel Soft. So I went on the computer and looked this up. You know, the #1 toilet paper brand in the world, in the United States, is actually by 50% market share, is actually Angel Soft, and it is an Amazon brand. So that's a good example of how Amazon learns from consumers what they buy, what they want. And actually, you know, I tested it just sort of, I can certify it is actually of the same quality like Pampers and Cottonelle. So no need to go to buy the brand anymore. But the fact of the matter is that in a very simple category that is obviously, there is very little innovation, I would think, and it's a very standard commoditized business. Or with the advantage that Amazon has by learning what consumers buy and the price points they buy, especially in this case buying for office, they became now the market leader relative to Pampers. I have a problem with that. There's something wrong. Of course, Pampers and Cottonelle and all of these brands, they participate with Amazon not because they want, it's because they need to. Because if they speak up, then they lose 10% of their market share or volume, and then they have a problem with their jobs. So my point is, the Web 2 has centralized things in a way that has become unhelpful because it's like, instead of like in the John Deere example, instead of sharing those data, it would be a way, if John Deere would be a monopolistic player, they would use those data to sell more freaking tractors. And that's really not really helpful. There are better values to create. So John Deere is sort of like a good company that sort of like finds a better way to do that. So Web 3, and this is why I finish, this is my last second to last slide. Web 3 to me is this one in a lifetime opportunity to actually bring this back, to actually decentralize. I want to show you, let me show you, this is the last slide. So it's the most complicated slide. And I'd like to just sort of speak a little bit to where my thinking is on that. And here's how I see it. The thing we discussed for the last several years, and especially 2023, is AI and Web 3. Web 3 is basically a philosophy, and the philosophy is we need to bring back decentralization. We don't need the middleman, but we also need decentralization, means where whoever creates the value should also be paid for the value. In Web 2, it's either the drivers make the money, create value, or the riders create value, consumers like me. And who is making the money? Airbnb. And Web 2, who is making the money in Apple? Who is making the money? Who is creating the value? It's people like you and I who use the apps that creates the information for the developers to write the code. And who is making the money? Apple does. You know, it's obviously the most biggest company in the world, and it's sort of not really fairly distributed. And there's obviously lawsuits in this one, case. So Web 3 is the idea that we figure out how we create shared value. That value is actually shared out and is not sucked up by the companies. And again, to Frank's point earlier on the data economy, instead of one company sucking up all the data from which they learn how to compete unfairly with some others, Web3 is saying like, hey, the ownership of data should not be with those people who have the capability to suck up data like Amazon or Apple or something. It's actually the ownership should be with the consumer. So that's that. The AI is just the opposite. And it worries me greatly what we hear now in the news. And Microsoft, of course, wants to spend, I think, 10 billion or something on Amazon, on OpenAI, on ChatGPT, for good reason, because AI is a monster that needs a lot of data. You know, when Kevin writes a text and he says, and in one paragraph he says, brand architecture is a very powerful tool that was originally pioneered by David Archer, my friend, and Erich Joachimsthaler, my friend. Then AI reads that paragraph and uses the information from the text, you know, and that's what ChatGPT basically does. They say they find the linkage between brand architecture is associated with Erich Joachimsthaler and David Archer, and Kevin opined, and many people do that. AI learns how to write your paragraph when you type in what is brand architecture, then you get a paragraph, and then it links to the. So that's how text works to machine, of course, machine learning. So the problem I see right now is that if we shift to AI, we basically go back to driving the monopolies behavior from the big companies. I mean, Google is in trouble right now. Why? They called it code red. And I heard yesterday that the founders actually came back because it's so serious, because they think ChatGPT is the biggest threat they faced in the history of the company for Google. And so, but that becomes just a disruptive competition game. It's not a collaboration game. Because what? AI is basically, or machine learning or any predictive analytics that is on the chart, requires data. And data, if you agree with me, as I said earlier, is actually owned by consumers because the value is created by consumers. So why should they make the money on OpenAI become a $40 billion company if they basically go around and just suck up all the data, in this case text, in order to for free? So now here's how I understand these things. Go back to the left side on this chart. There is a solution to that. And the solution is this back-end technology called blockchain. And blockchain to me is a simple thing. And that is anything that's online can be copied. You know, if Kevin sends me his latest article, I actually can easily copy that into a word processor. I improve on it, his English, and then I can put my name on it. Kevin wouldn't know. I can use Google Translate and translate it in German, and I think that many Germans will be very happy. And Kevin can say, oh, but I was first. He just copied from me. I go like, what do you know? You know, I have a whole PR agency. You know, like before you can voice out of the hinterland in North Carolina. You know, I have covered the whole thing. You know the whole PR, and everybody will think that I have invented. So online, that's the problem. You know, nobody can copy my physical things here, but online things can copy. So blockchain is something to be ignored from a technological perspective because it goes into hairy-fairy stuff and strange words like immutable, and it like makes me feel woolly when I think about it. But or permissionless and trustless and all these mumbo-jumbo words. But the basic idea is that blockchain allows you that digital content, anything digital cannot be copied anymore. Because once you put it on the blockchain, there's a record, and then forever we know who was the first person. So Kevin, if Kevin puts something out that is so amazing that they copy, then if he puts it on the blockchain, he has the right to that forever. The way to do it is through NFTs, which is basically a token. It's like anything you might have, a chip, but it's this one chip that Kevin holds, and if Kevin has it, can record that token, that NFT on his in his meta wallet, which is sort of a place where you put it, where you can secure it. It's yours. Where you hold it, it's like your wallet where you put your money, but it's online. Then it is forever. Kevin's paragraph is forever. That one that was recorded on the blockchain for the first time. Or any art form that you create or something like that. So to me, these application use cases here, DeFi is the same thing, just do it for finance. DeFi is sort of like a bit of a bad word because they call it decentralized finance, but everything that's sort of part of that is actually not centralized. The FTX, as an example, the exchange that just collapsed, SBF, the Sam Bankman-Fried. I've always said, I wish I had a son like Sam Bankman-Fried. As a professor, this Stanford professor, his parents, they have now a $16 million vacation apartment in Bahamas. And I go like, that's kind of nice. He may go to jail for many years, but he made his parents quite wealthy. University professors don't have $16 million properties. So there's a lot of bad news in the DeFi world because they call it decentralized finance, if in fact it's centralized with a centralized exchange in the case of FTX. Metaverse, the 3D environment. DAO is sort of another governance mechanism of basically code to govern, if you will, who owns what and who can share what with whom. So it's a very simple thing. So
Eric?
Yeah.
I was just, we're getting to the bottom of the hour. If you could summarize, it would be great to get into a discussion with some of the people who've been posting comments, my friend.
So yeah, I'm just finished. So this is my world, sort of where I come from is this is summarizing basically the thing. The way we can build a better world in the spirit of people-centered internet and bring it back to the people, let's say, is to build on the existing business like John Deere. You build this new economy, and you use a blockchain so that in the case of John Deere, they're not there yet right now, but in the case of John Deere, that the ownership of the data isn't in some cloud solution that is my John Deere right now, but it's actually owned by the farmers, and then farmers would be actually compensated for that. If you do that, then you create value on the demand side, namely on the consumer side. And this is where our areas of brand, experience, community, and innovation comes in. If you do that, and if consumers own the data, and therefore the value they create, then consumers also are in control in deciding who to give the data to and who not. And that, in my opinion, helps you to go from a competition economy to a collaboration economy, because then it's not Amazon and Apple and let's say Airbnb who owns the data, because it's actually the consumer, and then and everybody has a fair chance of using those data, even the competitors. And the way to do it, as I said earlier, and this is just I already said it, it's to develop these tokens. Forget the name NFT because it's associated with Bored Apes or something like that, and some other art form, art or something. But it's not the relevant piece. The relevant piece is the tokens is is a way to actually be compensated for the data, and their token is the one thing that actually can be recorded through a smart contract on blockchain. So anyway, and I think that my opinion is that the last sentence is that companies in the next several years really need to spend their time to go that direction in order to create a more equitable, a more responsible, or a fairer internet. Anyway, so that was my idea. I wanted to share with you how I see how you create a more an internet and exploit the advantages of Web3 and AI to actually create a fair shared value thing, as I wrote in my book. Anyway, thanks for reminding me, Kevin, that I was longer than I expected. I promised 30 minutes, and I had only
enthusiastic. Good for you.
It's still 10 slides, but then we talked about farmers too many times, I guess.
Well, that's all right. That's great. So thank you for unpacking the interaction field for us today, Erich. That's great. It's our tradition to open up to Q&A now, and we have an overtime that allows us to go to 1 o'clock Eastern time. So let's take advantage of that. One of our listeners that has been posting quite frequently, was the first person to post, is Mark Prensky. So Mark, I'll ask you to join our conversation, and your most burning question for Erich.
Thank you, Kevin. Did you have COVID, and are you feeling better? I vaguely heard that.
I came back from travel, and I did bring it back and had to quarantine here in the house, but I tested negative this past Thursday. So we're back in operational shape, and I have that behind us.
Okay.
That's so good.
Yeah, we missed you at the board meeting, but thank you. Glad to hear you're well. And just so everybody knows, the danger isn't over. Erich, thank you very much. I'm not sure exactly where you're from. If I had closed my eyes, it would have been like going to business school with Arnold Schwarzenegger as my, which is really funny. And here's what I think. I think you're trying to have it both ways. I think that in a sense, the whole idea of companies and profits and competition and all this is being proprietary, is having your own stuff that you then sell, and the poor consumer has to choose whether the consumer wants an Android system or an Apple system or this kind of stuff. And essentially we get screwed because we can't get everything, because we have to choose. That's so then what the network world offers is everything. The downside of that is, how do companies, proprietarily make money? And that's, to me, the big problem that you're really struggling with, is that because if we go to cooperation fully, which is like government running it all or whatever, however you structure that, it's no longer, am I here?
Yeah.
You can still hear me. Okay.
Yeah.
My screen went blank, but
I love the point. It's a very good point.
It's no longer competition, and it no longer makes proprietary people money. So that's, I'm wondering whether you're trying to have it both ways, and whether we need to, in this new networked world that we're all entering into, rethink the whole idea of what proprietary means, what data means. Does data, why is it your data? Why isn't it the world's data? What a particular piece of soil looks like. So I'll leave it there, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Big picture question there, Mark.
Very,
okay,
very, very good one. Yeah. Thank you so much. It upsets me, because the point you make, because I actually, I have a glass of wine, and then I say yeah, Eric, thanks very much. You'd like to have it both ways. I totally agree with that. It's sort of, it's how do you resolve this, without I mean, look, I love competition, I mean, I've been growing up like that. And it's an essential piece of a market economy in some ways. I mean, if I did my undergraduate in economics back many years ago in Frankfurt, Germany, and so it's sort of like feeling this. But so I totally agree with that. So it's a very good point.
So it's kind of, but you're living and trying to explore the both and, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many of our choices are either ors, and networks provide the opportunities for more both ands.
Yeah.
Eric Townsend also is going to be next. Finish your thought, Eric.
Yeah, no, I'd rather have comments than for me to speak more.
Okay,
I already had the hour.
Eric, join us.
Thank you. So I'm not involved in most of this world you're talking about. I'm a retired chemical engineer, and there's a group of us, mainly chemical engineers, who are doing a climate initiative that's based on, we talk about silos. You talked about walls.
Yes.
A structure that lies outside of all of the other things. And when I read your book subtitle, I thought, well, how could you put this in terms of shared value for technological, social, economic, and political climate solutions? Because that's what we're interested in doing. There's a detailed program and everything. We still have to get funding. We have to get people who do a lot of stuff we don't do, like internet. But that's kind of what we're up to. And it's kind of a different world, but yet the same.
Yeah. So, what sort of bothers me is with the business model that Mark sort of also sort of talked about. You build a business, and then you push out cars, let's say, or textile, a fashion business, and in producing fashion, let's say fashion is a big area of enormous waste. A lot of social problems in India and all of these places where they produce things. Rivers have these strange colors, fish dye and all of these things. And so here comes Shine, which is a Chinese company. This big. They grew very bigly. They're now the biggest company in the fashion business, and very successfully, they get investors and they become very big, and they spread around the world like wildfire. And then they realize, they say, oh, we also have a problem because we contribute significantly to the climate change, and we actually have workers in India actually have early deaths in the family and problems in newborns and all of this, and the water cannot be used anymore for consumption and things like that. And then what they do is they say, well, we are growing so massively, we should get a director of environment and political affairs and public affairs and something like that, and we give him about $10 million or $20 million to do a lot of PR and influence lobbyists and a PR campaign that talks about how great the greatness of Shine and things like that. Let's say, as an example, this Chinese company. And to me, the problem with this is that the climate change and the challenges that you mentioned, Eric, is an afterthought. And my again, I'm to Mark's point, I'm sort of on it both ways. I thought, couldn't you create rules and governance that makes it part of the business rather than an afterthought? Because the afterthought never works. If you look at all of the ESG goals that were by the Business Roundtable sort of like signed off by everybody, nobody has. Now just last week they checked them in for Davos. Nobody actually has achieved those. They're all sort of wrote these 100, the business roundtable, the 180 CEOs, they all signed that they will commit in 2022 to achieving those goals. Nobody achieved it. They go like, okay, I'm so sorry, it didn't work. Let's do it next year. And if you make it part of the business already, and that's sort of where I think is the opportunity with the interaction field, with actually creating the governance, let's say, on the blockchain, with rewarding consumers through tokens, and all these new mechanisms we have that we didn't have before. I think then we could actually solve these things not as one system, rather than as an afterthought. It's sort of where I thought. Anyway, but again, I feel like I'm sort of dreaming,
Mhm. Yeah, I might
Mark,
add
I
that,
really appreciate your comment there.
before ESG, there was a whole generation of corporate social responsibility initiatives, and
Yeah.
CSR essentially ended up with a lot of departments where the issues had a place to go so that they could be contained, all
Yeah.
right, and write a separate report, right next to the annual report. Here's our CSR report. As you point out, nothing changes until it becomes the fabric of how the company operates, right?
Yes.
So the goal of corporate social responsibility is to put that department out of business, right? Is that it doesn't need to be there anymore because that's how the business is operating. So next person is Lynn Wells. Lynn, glad you're, well, I think Lynn has departed, so I'll apologize. And Doug Hulen, you're next.
Well, thank you. Yeah, really appreciate your overview and discussion. One comment, I really like the chart about the market cap and the industries. I was looking at 2023 market cap and how things have changed. Apple's still #1, but like Facebook has gone down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Was kind of, so one question I would have to you is, is any speculation, as we shift from technology maybe to healthcare, like here in the United States, is $4 trillion we spend on healthcare. It's supposed to go up to $6 trillion by 2028. So that would be a question. And then a comment. I've been interacting with Gary Bowles. He wrote the AI Quiet Tsunami. Gary presented to PCI about last year, I think it was, and. Anyway, he talks about some of the key takeaways, and the need to have everyone to adapt was one of his key takeaways. Look at ways so the AI doesn't take over all the jobs. Like, what does it mean to be employed in this new technology? And his other comment was too much power in too few hands. That's one of the reasons the word open AI is to open it up to the masses. And you had your comment about Google versus OpenAI, and one of the challenges is Google, does search and you get a list of, hundreds of pages if you want to keep information. And with OpenAI, it gives you a large language model comes in and just gives you information that may or may not be accurate, right? But how do you monetize, just a one answer versus a whole bunch of pages that you can put advertising in? So these are some of the challenges I think that we're going to have in the 2020s. So it's going to be an exciting ride. That's why Gary's, if you go to his chart, he shows a little robot riding a surfboard, and the tsunami. You can either get buried by the wave, or you can use the power of the wave to do great things.
Yeah, I think that so on the market cap thing, I work in various areas in healthcare. We build like, for example, right now we build a system. One of the biggest problems in healthcare is the images are when you go get for diagnosis, the image taking is actually flawed. There are many images they are bad, and then the diagnosis and interpretation of images for the kind of treatment you need is actually flawed, like 45 million errors a year or something like that. So it's huge. And so we work with a company that actually has 100,000 sonographers that actually take images. And originally, as you know, in the medical field, they so this is you train your sonographers, they take an image, then you send over the image to the radiologist or to the treating physician, and the physician looks at it and it goes like, I don't know what I see or whatever, and then does some diagnosis, some treatment, and that's a flawed process. And we think that we can actually, if images actually are not just put on a CD-ROM and then carried over, we actually, if we upload them, analyze them with an AI with pattern recognition, we can actually identify bad images. And we can also use AI, just like use ChatGPT, and could say, hey, the most likely diagnosis here is XYZ, sort of like give some guidance for the treating physicians, because physicians really are not any good. So I work in this and a few other cases right now to think, and we think that this is a revolution because imaging is like everywhere. It's like central to a thing. And at the same time, when I look at all the companies, all the hospitals, all the hospital things, it's very unlikely that they will dominate the chart, the market cap chart. It's very unlikely. Actually, Microsoft is very likely to actually, or Google to actually get on the chart in healthcare rather than. So it's the technology companies, in this case, Microsoft and Google, who exploit their unfair advantage in some ways in healthcare, rather than truly those companies that actually are in healthcare. So that's on that healthcare example. On the AI side, AI. I mentioned this in earlier. AI is useless unless they capture or suck this data in, text or whatever it is. If Facebook needed data in order to sell us more, you make money on advertising or sharing of picture. That's Mickey Mouse relative to what the needs are for AI and machine learning. And who has the data? Now, companies have data, and of course, but Kevin has written a lot of articles about a lot of things. Kevin has a lot of data, and we all have a lot of data. So to me, there is a mechanism where these data, even a small fraction of data that an AI algorithm uses, OpenAI uses, and every time some AI uses the data to optimize ChatGPT, every time that there should be a transfer, a tiny fraction of transfer that goes into the metaverse of whoever they take the data. There are now lawsuits like Getty Images. If you saw that one, they say like, yeah, you can't just sort of like take our images. So it's still some. I totally agree, Doug, to the point that we are now in this crazy time, 2023, where this all has to be sorted out. In some ways. I think that Mark made the same point earlier. It really, we need to solve this because otherwise we'll live in a Microsoft world. We'll have Microsoft wedding, Microsoft divorces, Microsoft lawyers. Your Microsoft doctor welcomes you now. You're making right now. You already have to go. You call in and for doctor's appointment, and you say like, yeah, your Amazon doctor is now ready to see you. I'm like, what the hell? I think that it should be more equitable. I think that hopefully the law sort of like regulations are happening.
So thank you for that question, Doug, and those comments. Frank, you were with us right from the beginning. You put some wanted to be contacted afterwards, which is great. Do you have any questions for Erich during the Q&A right now?
Pressure in 30 seconds or less. The top down needs to partner with the bottom up. The internet was created during the 80s at a time where BBSs were doing the best they could with very low bandwidth, but we had text-based collaborative systems and a vision If everyone shares what they know, we'll all have access to all our knowledge. So in 1997, I became independent from the colleges and universities as Lone Eagle Consulting. I have vast content from literally 40 years of ambition to leverage the value and talent of all people in being able to be a lone eagle. My website is lone-eagles plural because I want to train the trainers. Well, now we're talking about getting the rest of the world on the internet without addressing really creating self-directed learners, ongoing mentorship, peer-to-peer. And Vint Cerf wrote an introduction to his new book, which says we're going to turn the current economic model on its head and focus on developing the talent and value of people to create an economy around that. I have vast experience with rural America rejecting that they're going to share anything of theirs individually or sharing between communities. And we've seen in our politics in America that that's really gone south. The level of educational value, educational attainment is quite low in the red states. And yet what we're creating is a place where the John Webb telescope can see 3,000 light years away, but we have a growing organization called the Flat Earth Society. Okay, those are the have-nots. They don't have the vision, and yet we're spending billions to get internet to the remaining people that are the underserved in the United States and around the world. I discovered people-centered internet just within the last year, though I was writing about people-centered initiatives and creating actionable resources starting in the mid-'80s. What's your take on what's really doable, turning the current economy on its head, if you have businesses of one like myself that are proliferating in an age where it's now viable to be a remote worker for multiple entities from home? Sorry for the long sentence.
Okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
Frank. Eric?
So we work on a number of initiatives in education, which I find fascinating because McGraw-Hill is one client, Bertelsmann, Reliance, which is in nurse.com, this is training of nurses, also healthcare type. So Udacity, we work on the Udacity. And I think that that relates also to the question of work from home. And there is actually a crazy world that has developed, in my opinion, like how power became part of university systems. You know, universities, I have 3 children. I took them through private schools in New York and more expenses in college and grad school now with my son. And it's incredible how education has become so expensive. And I think that the point I think that there is this, there's huge efforts that I see at least, and we do a lot of work. There's one person in particular, a woman and a team that specializes on educational issues. And and I think that the value of AI, and AI has sort of many variations to think about, but these new Web3 technologies, I think will democratize education a lot more, so that people don't have, you know, if they work from home, they can educate themselves. I mean, this whole idea of, you know, the application that everybody talks about, the blockchain application and the token again, is about how do you attribute to a person educational development. You know, when somebody takes a course over there and a course over there. Right now, it's impossible to actually track the experience a person has. If you think about, Frank, everything that you have acquired in the 30 or 40 years, there ought to be some value to that, that you can, that should be that you should be able to share with somebody and then make available and be compensated for it. And it doesn't matter whether you work from home or where that knowledge resides. And I think this is where I get excited about with so we created a few platforms in interaction fields for McGraw-Hill. We've done it for 5-7 years now, and it's and again goes back to Mark's point. It's hard for a company like McGraw-Hill to say, no, we make money on books, and we make a lot of money on books. We can and we sell to these professors the books, so that all the students need to buy the books, and then we make all the money, when students have to buy the books in the bookstore and things like that. And now you realize that actually that's not the value creation. There's a lot more value that is created like this. And I think that the blockchain applications, tokenization, and tokenization actually solves for that globally, actually, to democratize this. So it's early stages, but I think this is happening in the next 3 to 5 years, more than in other areas. Healthcare is huge, education is huge. Like if you think of Internet 1 or Internet 2, that may be more for media companies, advertising, and sort of some other retail in the Web 1. But I think that Web 3 is not a front-end technology. Web 3 is a back-end technology, and it builds the foundation for, like an example, your example of democratizing education and actually creating value for where education, where knowledge lies. Anyway, you said 30 seconds.
No, thank you.
It was more than 30 seconds.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Very, very thoughtful. So we have 2 more people in queue, and then we will wrap up. Bruce Parks, do you have a quick question for Erich? Okay, Bruce, if you're not
Bruce
with
is
us,
getting a coffee.
okay.
Now, Professor
let's-
Clark, are you giving grades at the end of this session? Because
everyone passes. Okay,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
They're
This
passing grades
ends
for
up
all
being
of us?
pass-fail today, but everybody's passing. Ben Konsinski, all right, Professor, your question for Erich.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with so much of what you're saying, and it echoes of the pathologies we've observed evolve since good intentions were subverted in many of the evolutionary stages. And I have numerous comments and observations in the chat, and I hope to have you read them later, see if they ring true. But one comment that we have perverse incentives when, and especially in markets that are clearly identified, when a company has 90% of its revenue off of targeted advertising, that it creates a perverse incentive for entities to collect whatever, not only collect it, but hold it, and hold it proprietary. So your John Deere issue is not about, they could have collected and tried to hold it proprietary and fight a market for getting that, but creating the shareable opportunity of that collection allows them to leverage it as they wish. But the Facebook and Alphabet have 80–90% of their revenue off of advertising.
Yes.
And that advertising is driven by its value of targeted notions in there too. Other comment on the blockchain issue is the blockchain creates scarcity from abundance. Anything that is a digital asset could be abundant. I can replicate it all over the place. So I need to create value. I need to create scarcity. I need to create ownership of Kevin's paragraph so that you can't steal it from him. And therefore, I use the blockchain as a means of creating a scarcity that that raises value, but also creates responsibility. That's in there. Anyway,
I love the point. Yeah.
Okay.
Scarcity from just on the I make a comment on the point on advertising. I don't think this is going to go away in the next many years to come. Google will be doing it, and Facebook will be doing it. Now we're getting to retail media. Amazon is doing it. A friend of mine is now Amazon advertising, Uber advertising. Now this is all a part of the targeted advertising approach. I don't think it's going away, but when Google optimizes targeted advertising or on search, let's say, there's no reason why the data that actually everybody else uses and myself should also be my data, and then I should be also compensated for it. So maybe that doesn't make Google the same profitable model.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, because they make 95% of, pure profit. Advertising is pure profit. Like margins is 95%. Fuck that. If I run in a company over 1,000 people, we make 20%, and after the bonus is paid out, 10%. That's margins. That's a normal business, and we're doing quite well. So financially, no complaints. But nobody, when somebody makes 95% profit margins on their product, that's a robbery. And so no problem. I just think that those 95% profit margins that makes all of these fuckers billionaires 100 times over, it's just too much. Like maybe nobody can take it with them. They have $100 billion net worth in 10 years or 20 years or whatever, 5 years now. FTX went to 36 billion in just 3 years, as you well know. So no, I think that there ought to be, there's a lot of room to, even if Google makes 15% and 25% on their margin, on their advertising, they're still going to be billionaires over and over. They don't need 95%. So I think that, and then I think that there's so I think that I just am upset.
Well, yeah, you
I should
certainly
have started Google instead of doing what I do.
Well, we got you to the point where you expressed yourself in an exceptional way, Erich, and we're delighted that you had that you were with us. I'm going to correct or just for the record say that the first reason that I went to go visit you was because I told David that I thought that the brand architecture model was wrong, right? That we should really be pursuing brand ecosystems, right? Because the brands kind of bump into each other. And that was our discussion. And the fact is that, I think the interaction field is an instantiation of, understanding that ecosystem world. So I'm delighted to see you writing about it.
It took me another 20 years to come around to that.
It's okay. I know, but like you said, I didn't have the PR machine behind me and the documentation at the time, right? But it was the catalyst, and we've had great conversations over the years. And you are passionate about what you do, and I think that we're delighted that you spent some time with us with the people-centered internet today. So we'll look forward to having you with us. We'll add you to the distribution list if you'd like to be part of our conversations in the future. You'd be welcome. And everyone, thanks for being with us. Any concluding comments, Erich, or were those the concluding comments for you? Are you good? Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Have a
what's
great
left
Sunday.
of it, and we will talk again soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Outstanding,
Bye-bye now.
Erich. Outstanding.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well done.